You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hey, this is John Preston, Marine Combat Veteran and Pacific Records recording artist. Just reaching out to have you check out our new album, Battle Cry, Songs of America's Heroes, an album featuring phenomenal other combat veteran artists like Scott Brown of the Scooter Brown Band, Ryan Weaver, Rowdy Johnson, just an incredible mix of people. This is all veterans telling our stories and our lives, and we're giving 100% of our proceeds to the Valkyrie Initiative to help veterans and first responders integrate back into society. I myself have battled with post-traumatic stress for many years and lost my own brother, a Marine Corps veteran, to suicide. I ask that you step with us and make this happen. We are in pre-order right now and release on March 17th. Go to iTunes, go to Amazon, buy. We plan on making the charts and making it at a very high level, and your support right now makes a difference. This is the release of my new song, Superman Falls, which is actually about the loss of my own brother, which happened last year, and I would love for everyone to check it out, to listen, and hopefully it'll make a difference in many lives.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Here's George Foreman with InventHelp.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp has been helping inventors for more than 30 years and has sales offices nationwide. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. If you have an idea and want to try to patent it and submit it to companies, you should call InventHelp today for free information.
Listen, I can't guarantee a company will be interested in your idea, but I believe every inventor deserves the opportunity to step into the ring and take their best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
Get your free inventor's information. Call 1-800-353-6490. That's 1-800-353-6490. Again, 1-800-353-6490.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
A chemical attack in Syria has left 86 dead, including 26 children, but Minister Walid al-Malam has said that the Syrian army did not, and will not use this kind of weapons, not just against our own people, but even against the terrorists that attack our civilians with their mortar rounds. The Russian Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, warned the West not to jump to conclusions about blaming Assad, and last night while President Trump was having dinner with China's president, the U.S. launched 59 Tomahawk missiles at a Syrian base. What exactly is going on in Syria? Neil Gorsuch was confirmed as a new Supreme Court justice that will be replacing Justice Antonin Scalia's seat, but it wasn't an easy road to get there, and that road is paved in hypocrisy and falsehoods from the left. Because a day can't go by without the left being offended by something, one of this week's hot topics on the left was that Vice President Mike Pence has a standard rule in his marriage that he will not have dinner with any other woman besides his wife alone. Is this really that controversial? Is it an impossible standard to have in today's day and age? But first, a new movie has hit the theaters, Ghost in the Shell, starring Scarlett Johannson as the main character, and, as is the current running trend in Hollywood right now, a lot of social justice warriors are jumping to claims of whitewashing because her character is the anime version in Japanese. I would have had a call-in guest tonight, but he's not available right now to share his thoughts on this, but he might be tuning in and doing some comments on the stream. But we'll have a conversation about that as we start there tonight on the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. Welcome to the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. Happy you could be here with us. You may be watching right now live on Facebook Live, where you can find me every Friday night at 9 p.m. and can interact with comments and questions. You can also find the Generation Y Conservative on Facebook by searching for the Generation Y Conservative. You can find it on YouTube under the Generation Y Conservative as well, where you'll find other content besides these podcasts, including what has turned into also movie reviews. The last one being Beauty and the Beast we reviewed. We also reviewed Kong Skull Island and the Logan movie. And a couple other offshoot topics as well on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter at Gen Y Conservative without the E on the end. You can find the audio versions of this podcast on Google Play and Stitcher. And you can also listen to a repeat of it on KLRN Sundays at 3 p.m. until 5 p.m. They have also put me on iTunes as well, so if you search for the Generation Y Conservative, you'll find me on there too. This month's charity that we're spotlighting, which I believe is worthy of your time and donations, is local to the Lehigh Valley and is called the Love Ran Red Foundation. Here's the Love Ran Red Foundation's mission statement. Love Ran Red Foundation is a Christian-based nonprofit foundation dedicated to helping adults with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, and autism. 81% of adults with autism live with their aging parents. What happens when their parents are no longer living or can no longer take care of them? Well, Love Ran Red Foundation is dedicated to providing essential living assistance to families of adults with autism and developmental disabilities. You can learn more and consider donating by visiting www.loveranredfoundation.org. And I think that's a good organization with a good mission that you can dedicate your time and money to. Tonight, my guest host is Gabe. I've known Gabe for a long time. We've even had a couple family vacations together, right? And he is not only a follower of the Generation Y Conservative page on Facebook, but you'll actually find him regularly getting involved with interactions on there as well, with comments and other tidbits of input as well. Actually, as a matter of fact, I was just thinking, one of the things that I brought up in one of my podcasts, I said at one point in time in one of the first podcasts, especially in regards to the Syrian refugee crisis, I said at one point in time, I have a friend that has suggested using retired cruise ships and stuff like that to put the refugees on the Mediterranean. I think that's a great idea, and that happened that was you, right?
Yes,
it was. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. I pay attention to that stuff, and I think that you have a lot of great input on Facebook, and I take to that. So let me see here if anybody's getting involved. We have Matt Okay, he said call again. I'm going to try, Matt. I am having some difficulty here. Yeah, I'm not getting reception. I'm not getting a reception out here. So, Matt, you can get involved by commenting on the stream if you want to. And I'd be happy to feature you on an upcoming podcast once your basketball season is over, which we talked about. But our first topic tonight actually goes into what Matt was going to be involved with there, and it is about the social justice warriors that are screaming whitewashing at Hollywood for casting Scarlett Johannson as the Major, which is the main character, in the new movie Ghost in the Shell, which is based on a Japanese anime. Now, this is according to the article that I read in regards to this, but there are many articles that you can find out there. Many accuse the film of blatant whitewashing months before the film was actually released. You know what that means, right?
Yes.
So basically, for anyone that doesn't know what that means, it's they take a traditionally other ethnicity character that isn't white and replace them with a white actor or actress, right?
So the Last Samurai being Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Yeah. And what could be the reason for that? I think we'll get into that, and I think you have a couple things to say about that as well. So the film earned just $19 million its opening weekend, which is a significant loss given the film's reported $110 million budget. So they're only about 99? No. 10? No, whatever. It's in the 90.
They're not doing well.
They're not doing good at all. So my first question off the bat is, with it having such a bad opening weekend, was there any other big movies out there at the time that released alongside of it that could have had an impact on it? Your wife seeing it maybe 3 or 4 times now?
So I can't speak to the box office earnings of The Ghost in the Shell, but I can speak to the box office earnings of, I don't know, The Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. Anything Disney happens to put out with their name on it might be a draw. Happen to have seen that in the past, and my wife contributed to that heavily, I would say.
3 or 4 times.
Yes, including dragging me there once.
Anytime I actually pay close attention to the entertainment industry, especially in regards to new movie trailers and things that are coming out. And this Beauty and the Beast, I was on top of this for over a year, knowing it was coming out. What was the other movie recently that released? I'm not really sure, but some of these... Oh, It. Okay, so it's coming out in September, right?
Okay.
I've known about this remake for over 2 years now. I know who the actor was that was playing Pennywise before they switched to this new actor. So I pay really close attention to Hollywood and what's going on because I'm a geek like that, you know? Mm-hmm. But in regards to this, I've seen in Hollywood when they actually take an opening weekend of a movie and move it because they know that the one that they're competing against for that weekend is going to demolish them.
Sure.
That more people are likely to take their money and spend it wisely according to that weekend on what they deem a better movie.
Sure.
That they're not going to go in for double features on the weekend, you know? So I think that had a lot to do with the earnings of this, which has nothing to do with the whitewashing portion. But so here's a statement that they put out. It said, "We had hopes for better results domestically," said Kyle Davis, the domestic distribution chief at Paramount, according to CBC News. "I think the conversation regarding casting impacted the reviews." Now, what he's referring to here is that there had been this whole controversy over whitewashing the cast has been apparently going on for some time now, since the trailer's release, I guess.
Okay.
And even I, who follows Hollywood and politics, didn't hear a thing about this until it became a big issue on their earnings loss, right? Apparently, the film has earned only a 45% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And Davis also said, "You've got a movie that is very important to the fanboys since it's based on a Japanese anime movie. So you're always trying to thread that needle between honoring the source material and making a movie for a mass audience. That's challenging, but clearly the reviews didn't help." Anything you can say about that before we go on?
I think one key point in there is the word fanboy. Okay, I'm a geek on some things. Don't happen to be a geek in this scenario. I've never heard of the Ghost in the Shell. In fact, this might have been the second time I've ever heard the name in this podcast. Okay. So I'm not aware of the original. I'm not aware of the history of the anime version. I'm not a fan of anime.
Yeah, either am I. And I'm sorry, Ben, and those other people that are friends that are shaming me right now.
So you have to market a product for art is one thing. To market a product to make money is another. To me, I could be wrong. Seems to me in America, anime is an art form. It has very strong following by the people that follow it, but it's not a mainstream. It's not a mainstream art form.
How would you make it mainstream?
I don't know that.
Maybe a top-of-the-line Hollywood actress in the lead role.
So number 2, this is a business. Okay.
Yep. Okay. I have that in my notes, but go ahead.
You want the fanboys to like it, you will never make the money. If only the fanboys are the ones bringing in your money. Mm-hmm. If you're in it for the art, great. If we're talking about box office is a national business, or the box office. It's international business, but I assume we're talking the majority of the Hollywood, United States.
Well, yeah, we'll actually get into a little bit of what the Japanese thought too. I found some interesting
I'd like
stuff.
to hear that. Yeah. But that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
A lot of artists are great artists, but they're not making any money because they're not, quote unquote, selling out.
Right.
Okay.
So what I actually said here is that when you watch the other video that I posted on my Facebook page, which you can find, I don't suggest going to that now because you're watching us, but you can actually check that out later. A Japanese gentleman named Yuta post, and it was actually posted by Milo Yiannopoulos, so he reposted this guy's video that he did. He took to the streets to interview people in Japan and asked them their thoughts on Scarlett Johannson being cast as the Major. And there were actually a lot of positive and glowing reactions. As a matter of fact, they said, it's because she has beautiful eyes, that she's a great actress. No one had anything bad to say. And then they, after they did that, they were actually, the same people were presented with the arguments from the social justice warriors on their claims of whitewashing. Mm-hmm. And that did change things a little bit. But not to the point where it significantly changed the argument from those people on why she was chosen, and no one really changed their opinion on the casting. They said they could understand why this may be a controversy, but no one said, yeah, that's right, they probably should have chosen a Japanese actress, right? So, I liken this to something that my friend Matt actually got involved with last year, and I don't know if we discussed this on the podcast or not. I know we certainly got into a heated discussion online about it. But I liken this much to the controversy over the football team named the Redskins, right? Which was a hot topic last year. It's kind of died off since then, by especially the social justice warriors here in America. But it turned out that the ones that it supposedly was most offensive to, which was the Native Americans, that in the Washington Post poll of Native Americans, 9 out of 10, or 90%, said that they were not offended by the team name. So it turned out that 90% of the Native Americans that they polled were not offended by the Redskins name. In the same case here, not that this is a scientific or mass poll that this gentleman took in Japan, but they weren't offended. It's more of the American people, again, leading the charge for the social justice warriors, getting offended by something for someone else when those people wouldn't have even thought twice unless their arguments for whitewashing were actually brought up.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
So in response to my Facebook post about Ghost in the Shell, Matt, my friend and former co-host on the show, chimed in and said that he disagrees with me. And we'll certainly get some more information from him on what his thoughts are. And I'm sorry I have the laptop pushed away from me here a little bit, but please don't make it I don't know what it says, sorry. My eyes are gone. So I am seeing comments here. It looks like Mike Steppen is probably saying hello to you for being on here.
Oh, okay. Hey, Mike.
So, Matt, here's the thing. And I said to Matt on my Facebook post yesterday, if I want to have an honest conversation with you in person or on the phone where I get an immediate reaction without the luxury of time to respond or research on the computer to find what I'm asking, right? And my question would be this. If you're spending $110 million on a movie and expect to recoup that budget and actually make money without hiring an actor or actress that is an audience magnet, how do you do it? Right? How are you going to do that? And with that in mind, this is the big question that I'd have for him. What Japanese actress out there has the recognition like a Scarlett Johannson does to help pull that kind of box office revenue in? Now, I'm a movie freak. I see all movies, right? Mm-hmm. Offhand, I can't name a Japanese actress at all, right? So if that's the case, if he said something to me, oh, this person who starred in this movie, I would still be likely to say that's not a Scarlett Johannson, right? You know? And when you're talking about big budget Hollywood movies, especially for the appeal in America, I mean, they push out some pretty crazy Japanese movies over there with their big action stars. And China does the same thing. I mean, they have like that, the guy that actually starred in Star Wars Rogue One who played, do you watch Star Wars stuff?
I'm not a fan, but I know you are.
Yeah, so the one guy that was in there was actually Ip Man in their series over there, so he was huge. Never saw the movies. I know it's a crazy martial arts entertainment movies and everything, and people went nuts and got excited over him being this blind Jedi temple protector. He wasn't actually a Jedi, but he had like this connection with the Force. You're like, get on with it, please.
Hey, have at it. But, I just can't comment.
Yeah, so things like that. It's a nice little throw-in, but again, to have him as the main character in an American movie probably wouldn't have that kind of draw and appeal. He was a secondary character in this movie, right?
Sure.
So, and I said, I believe we have talked about this before, but it is about being more of a business decision to have that movie actually make that money. You can throw out a $110 million budget for a movie, but if you can't exceed that, if you meet it, you're toast, right? Even if you just meet it and recoup your losses in putting into the film, you have to exceed that if you have any chance of making money on it, or, as my friend who saw it, who said it was an excellent movie, I saw mixed reviews on it, he's hoping that there's a sequel, because obviously if this is an anime over there are sequel potentials and everything. Mm-hmm. He wants to see a sequel. Well, that sequel's not going to happen probably unless they start making money on this.
Sure.
I think it's kind of fascinating that everyone... You're going to like this. Oh, you fell asleep. No, you were drinking, so you don't remember too much. I said it's fascinating that everyone celebrates white characters being replaced with more ethnic characters, like the handful in Beauty and the Beast, but get in an uproar when the reverse is done. Shouldn't the response be equal across the board when replacing traditionally known characters with different ethnicities or sexes? Because that's another one. Sometimes they replace like a traditional female role with a male, or most likely in the reverse direction. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't those same people that are in an uproar over this get in an uproar about the ethnicities that were replaced in the French cast of Beauty and the Beast, right?
Right.
And I didn't make a big deal out of that in my review of Beauty and the Beast because it's a fantasy movie. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I said, all these people are in an uproar about there being a potential homosexual scene in it, but in the meantime, for over 20 years now, we've been applauding a princess going after a beast.
Right.
No
worries with that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So.
Well, he's French.
Yeah. Well, that's you gotta let the French go on some things, right? So, do you have any more thoughts on this topic at all?
I think the two main things. There's two issues that we're looking at here. Number one is, why didn't they make money? So I see something like this. I don't know who the target audience is.
True.
Okay.
I have some guesses, but
if you release a true-to-form anime version, the target audience is the fanboys we talked about.
Yes.
If you try to mainstream this, nobody who doesn't have a history with anime is going to be all over seeing this, unless they are a die-hard Scarlett Johannson fan.
Yep.
Okay? I don't know how many die-hard Scarlett Johannson fans are that will go see a movie just because she's in it. Maybe there's a lot. She adds her career and the experience she has to any movie she's in,
True.
if it's a good movie. But the fanboys aren't going to want to see this, in my mind. Maybe they do, but my gut feel is they wouldn't. They see it as a bastardization.
I don't know. I think that this uproar is from. I don't think that they're fanboys.
Okay.
I'm going to throw that out there. Well, and that's just a guess, but I think this has more to do with the social justice warrior type people looking at. I think it, like I said, a day can't go by. If a day goes by where they're not offended by something and they're digging for something and can't find anything to be offended by, their day is ruined.
Sure.
Right? And it's just like anything now. There's a couple things that have been going on. So the big controversy actually in the same weekend. Not only that, you know what else opened up on this weekend? Power Rangers. So again, specific audience, right? I didn't like the TV show. I thought it was really corny. But that opened up at the same time, and that had the similar controversy that Beauty and the Beast did with I'm sorry to say this, but they shoehorned in a gay character.
Okay.
Right. The yellow Power Ranger is a lesbian, and the articles I read that addressed this from the left, they were disappointed in both movies that they touched the envelope but didn't push it. Right. That this Power Ranger, she made mention of it, but they never showed anything. In the movie, there was a 3-second dance scene at the end with LeFou and the other male when he was dressed in a dress, and the big dance sequence in Beauty and the Beast, but that's all there was, right? Otherwise, I actually just watched with my daughters the animated version of Beauty and the Beast within the last week, and LeFou was actually just as clingy and weird as the live action one, right? And I thought, okay, one of the other issues was that Emma Watson, being the modern day feminist that she is, which I don't think she really understands modern feminism versus like real feminism in my mind, right? Okay. I think modern feminism is man-hating.
Sure.
You know, I think that there was a true feminist movement that actually served a purpose, and you're actually seeing, I think Milo Yiannopoulos has mentioned the vast numbers of women that are leaving that label because they don't agree with the man-hating feminism of today. But that being said, Emma Watson's character, she chose to go without the corset in the dress to pull everything together like the traditional French dresses that were made. And instead of being a bookworm, she was one of the inventors along with her father in the movie, which they said that, but it looked like she was more of a tinkerer and handing him tools. I didn't really see that.
Okay.
But where was I going with this? That was one of the other controversies, and I think that all this stuff just kind of fell flat. I think that they are trying to shoehorn in these agendas in Hollywood, and people are taking notice, right? And I don't think it's appreciated. As a matter of fact, Marvel Comics, the president. This is I'm going down nerd trails here for you.
Okay,
no problem. I'm sorry, because I keep on reading up on this stuff.
Sure.
So the head of Marvel Comics said recently that in their quest to include more female superhero characters and LGBTQ characters into their comics, they've lost their fan base, right? That with all this uproar from social justice warriors that there isn't enough inclusion, they felt that with enough uproar and outcry that they would have that they should have this possibility of expanding their audience into a more diverse, enlarged audience and actually get their comics out there. And he's saying that since they took that route, they've actually more so lost fan bases, and that the people that fall into those categories are not reading comics even with this happening. That should have been apparent from the beginning. right? When you try to shoehorn in an agenda, people take notice to it, you know? So he literally said in an interview that this did not work and it was detrimental to our sales. Well, there you have it. You know?
Sure.
This is happening everywhere. Now, that's the difference between trying to shoehorn in a social agenda, Beauty and the Beast, Power Rangers, Marvel Comics, versus the audience or potential audience claiming, in this case with Ghost in a Shell, that there's a different agenda and that they're, you know, breaking an unspoken rule of casting according to lore, I guess you could say, would be the best way of doing it. So I kind of went off in all different directions. My mind is like, works like that. So,
I mean, I think, you know, like we talked about from the business standpoint, there's any number of reasons why it wasn't successful. I don't think the whitewashing or the social justice warrior aspect had anything to do with it. I don't think it had a financial aspect. The social justice warrior component to this story or this outrage, people just love to be recreationally offended.
Yes.
No matter what you do, you're going to offend someone. And if you're an artist, that should be a goal of yours. Art should be an expression of yourself. Okay? And if art is an expression of yourself, there's going to be people who don't agree with you. I can't speak for if it's a good movie or not, but to say that they're being racist or not including people or trying to whitewash, they're trying to make money.
Yeah.
If they wanted to stay true and not whitewash or put a white character in and just continue the art, it'd still be in Japan, it would still be pure anime, and they would continue that, and that's it.
Yeah, so what you're saying is, and I'm just going to be repeating basically what you just said, is if this was so popular in the format that it was, just continue with that format in Japan.
Right.
But this is an Americanized version of it.
Sure.
It's straight out of Hollywood.
Sure.
You know? So there's precedent there in Americanizing it to possibly have an American actress that will appeal to the audience. You know? I agree with that.
It is what it is. I mean, it's made in Hollywood. We're going to use the products that are the best sellers in Hollywood, and actors and actresses are products.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll move on from that because I just ventured into multiple nerd pools there. This week there was also an uproar from the left over the fact that Vice President Mike Pence does not have dinner alone with any woman other than his wife, and also refuses to engage in gatherings where there's alcohol involved unless his wife is at his side, and people happen to be shocked over that. Headlines across sources were truly astounding to me in regards to this. Fortune's headline read, "How Mike Pence's dumb dinner rule puts women at a disadvantage." The LA Times wrote, "Mike Pence won't dine alone with a woman who's not his wife. Is that sexist?" And the Atlantic's read, "How Pence's doodly dinners hurt women."
Wow.
Yeah. So it's they're searching for something. That's why I put. The Fortune writer wrote, I was actually calling my wife into the room as I was doing research for this, because she was just as spitting angry at this stuff as me, right? So the Fortune writer wrote, "It's bad enough to place women into buckets labeled with the obvious cliches, Madonna or whore, mother or mistress, bitchy or dim. Now we have to worry about being excluded from dinner tables just because we're female? Sigh." So she also said this, "Let's set a few things straight, because I'm under the assumption that just about everyone on Earth can agree on the following. Number one, women are people too. 2, women are capable of dining with men without threatening marriages, his or hers. 3, women should be both seen and heard, often simultaneously. To be fair, Pence's comment was made in order to show his devotion to his wife and his belief in his marriage, and these are values that I imagine most everyone, regardless of religion or politics, can get behind. I fully support anyone's efforts to stay loyal to his wife, until, of course, he suggests that my mere presence would somehow make that less likely. Then you lose me." So I said in regards to this, isn't it a matter of perception, though, especially for celebrities, Sorry. Especially for celebrities and politicians that are constantly under the microscope, looking for something to criticize, even if both parties are faithful to their partners.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
I mean, there's a difference between you and I doing this, going out to dinner with someone of the opposite sex that's not our wives. I personally wouldn't do it. But there's a difference between me doing it and a politician in this status that Mike Pence is in, vice president, or even a celebrity, even not even an A-list celebrity. People are always looking to pin something on someone. And that's actually a reflection on our society, which is they're looking for the negative aspects. We've completely lost touch with the reality of people trying to assume the best in other people and looking for positive things, and instead are looking for something to be either offended about or mad about, or in some cases even blackmail people over.
Mm-hmm.
The LA Times wrote, "Was this a sign of..." This is one that gets me. "Was this a sign of marital devotion and respect, or a signal that the Pences don't trust Mike Pence to be alone with a woman? Or perhaps don't trust a woman to be alone with Mike Pence?"
Lovely.
Yeah, it's looking for the negative, is it not?
Of course.
So I said, can we ever approach topics without assuming the worst in people? As the Fortune writer said, most everyone can get behind the value of marriage, but it appears in these like they are looking for an angle to destroy the man and his character over something that is obviously for the benefit of their marriage. So the Atlantic mentioned a research scholar at UCLA Center for the Study of Women, which should be an indicator right there, who wrote, "When men avoid professional relationships with women, even if for noble reasons, it actually hurts women in the end. The research is irrefutable. Those with larger networks earn more money and get promoted faster. Because men typically dominate senior management, there's evidence that the most valuable network members may be men. Without access to beneficial friendships and mentor relationships with executive men, women won't be able to close the gender gap that exists in most professions." Oh, looks like your brother commented. Much better, he said. Okay, good. Okay, so they're saying here that in order to have a professional network available to women,
okay,
they have to be able to have these one-on-one interactions with men, and I think she even mentioned mentorships, basically. Like if there's a male in a senior position, that he can mentor her and that she'll go faster than anything else. My question to that then is, here's my compromise. Because I mention it later on what gets in the way of this kind of stuff, is, let's say I'm the boss and I have a female worker that works beside me, an assistant or something that's highly involved, right? Like vice president to the president in the company, okay? I would assume in a mentorship position that if I invite her into the office and there's people outside the office, I leave the door open, right? I think that's a pretty good compromise. I wouldn't mind a one-on-one interaction as long as there can't be assumptions behind closed door, right? What are your thoughts on that? Because it looks like you almost disagree. It's up to you.
I do. So there's a few components to this. As much as number one, you used the key word, and that's perception.
Yes.
Okay. This is not about, and I personally have like a varied feeling on my personal life of whether or not I will meet one-on-one with a female that is not my wife. Okay. Some situations I will, some situations I won't. Mm-hmm. Okay. I can't think of any one time I've had dinner with a female who is not my wife. Not because I wouldn't. It might happen tomorrow for something involved with my business. Mm-hmm. I never have. Okay.
Go ahead.
So I've been in a situation with business lunches where I have a female client. Okay. So in my experience, the people that follow Mike Pence's thoughts on this or practice on this, it's a religious-based thing, and it goes with perception of, I don't want people thinking or assuming, as you were saying, something other than is untoward or what is going on purely in the interaction is happening. Okay, great. I do think, though, okay, so we take the open and closed door scenario. Okay. So in my business, managers are often going to have closed door conversations because privacy is of the utmost importance and is also some of the biggest touchy points with any corporation now.
Okay. Confidential information.
Confidentiality.
Yep.
And there's a lot of closed door meetings. I personally never think anything of it. It's two coworkers or a manager subordinate relationship. I would expect the same closed door mentality if my boss was a female or a male.
Okay.
And they called me in for a confidential meeting about my performance, about our direction, about something that the general corporation populace does not need to hear. Okay. So I personally don't make assumptions based upon, hey, the door's closed.
Well, not you. I'm talking about, and I agree with you. I don't think it's everyone. Again, it's not everyone that looks for the negatives in society, right?
Right.
But
I do think
there's situations, right? And I'm talking third-party situations. Like, I've been in companies where you wonder if there's something else going on the side, right?
Sure.
And that door closes, and the gossipy person in the office is like, oh, there they go again, you know, what's going on behind me? And you're like, now it puts the perception in my mind because I don't typically think along that route, and I started to think along that route because someone's like, oh, you know, something may be going on. Did you see the way that they look at each other? You know, it's always these, and that's office gossip people that
Sure.
take charge and that kind of stuff. But I agree with you. I understand confidential things. Like, look, if you're hiring someone or firing someone or reprimanding someone, the door being open is almost publicly shaming that person. You know, in the case of firing or reprimand or anything like that. So I can understand that. But again, in that situation, it opens a door to possibilities where you close the door, you do that, and I'm almost playing devil's advocate because, again, I think that the door should be closed for that. But let's say you fire someone of the opposite sex and they leave and say, you know, while he brought me in and we started talking about something else and he started coming on to me and I wasn't having it, so he fired me. Well, how do you prove it?
Well,
right? You know, it's like...
generally, in my experience, it's not a one-on-one for that.
Okay.
Management, HR, and the employee.
Okay.
And that's to have it out on the table. They take notes. They do the whole thing.
Yeah. I've been in one situation where that wasn't the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
But I guess I struggle to see the point in who cares what Mike Pence does. I care what Mike Pence does when he puts his suit on and goes into work that morning. Who he has dinner with. You know, I don't care what Bill Clinton was doing either.
Okay, and that's consistency.
Until he lied.
Okay.
Then I have a problem.
That's consistency, because I've said that about Trump, right, during the primaries, which is the left that was up in arms over him saying things on a tour bus in private, got all up in arms about that, but then in the 90s were like, so he got a blowjob under the Oval Office desk. Who really cares? You know, that's between him and his wife. That doesn't have anything to do with me. Well, all I'm asking for in that situation is consistency at that point. You know, you're very consistent, and that's fine. If you think that this is not a big deal, then, and you didn't think that was a big deal, then that's consistency, and that's all I'm looking for. And I disagree with you, but I also respect that.
If he's meeting behind a closed door with Assad's wife,
well,
that might be a female that I'm going to say, what's going on?
Here's my thing on high
not because
she's
female.
Right. Yeah. Well, don't assume anything anymore either. So my problem with any politicians that have control over votes at high levels, right? Getting involved in extramarital things is, especially in private, if it's an affair, it could be blackmail to do something. I mean, there's a possibility, and that's me thinking conspiratorial and everything. But there's a look at Russia. They're always trying to do different things. Russia has some beautiful women. Okay, they send one of those over to now we did this. By the way, you're gonna work with Putin on something, because if you don't, I'm coming out with what happened here. And that's the kind of stuff that happens. And that maybe I watch too much House of Cards. Who knows?
I'm gonna say this: the capability that exists, regardless of, I think, regardless of how he conducts himself behind closed doors, I think the capability for blackmail exists. I think the capability for a frame job exists that could be so well orchestrated to a point that it could happen whether or not he did anything anyway. The other point I would want to make, as much as it pains me to agree with the social justice warrior angle on this, I don't disagree that if a female can't have a one-on-one business conversation with a male of a higher position with a client, so let's say the woman is I'm not going to say legal counsel, because I would hope that's pretty cut and dry, but her client is male and she needs to earn that business. I have lots of clients that are female. I have lots of clients that are male. I don't treat them differently. It's my job to earn their business, and there's some conversations that have to be had behind closed doors. If the individual is a president of a company, you can't have a financial meeting necessarily in front of their employees. You may be bringing up things that are not public knowledge. And if we're ultimately moving towards equality, not preferential treatment, I think that possibly could hinder someone if it's looked down upon. That all aside, again, it's Mike Pence's decision. Respect the man for it, or don't. But it does not affect how, or what we think of him as a man does not affect his ultimate ability to perform. It's, they want to hate him regardless.
Oh, absolutely.
And here's a good way to maybe if I throw this spitball, if I could get 4,200 likes of people that also hate this man, they're down for it.
Let me just see. I'm just going to read through things. I might be repeating myself here, but I said, besides blatant infidelity, isn't it entirely possible that our culture, which has shown tendencies in the past to push people into lawsuits for sexual harassment over the slightest things that most would agree are not sexual harassment, that sexual harassment definition over the last decade has broadened to include some pretty stupid things. Like, listen, if you are verbally pursuing a female in an office environment antagonistically to the point where she just can't function anymore, then in that case, words are a problem, right? In most cases, I'm going to say, words don't hurt. But if it's hurting your performance because you can't get your job function done, then there's a problem there. But I'm hearing more ridiculous things lately as far as like sexual harassment. And offhand, I don't have like what I'm specifically referencing to, but things like, he shot me a look. It's like, come on. But the fact that there are no witnesses around to support someone being blamed for things when they may be innocent, especially in Washington, where you could be blackmailed for political purposes. So I just mentioned that. The Guardian wrote, while Republicans swoon over Pence's supposed old-school propriety, the rest of us were simply reminded that you don't need to brag about grabbing pussies to be a misogynist. If respecting your wife and marriage labels you a misogynist, I'll take that label from these.
I'm with you.
So, they also wrote, it's an insulting view of men, a limiting role for women. We're there to either entice or domesticate, in an archaic take on gender roles more generally. So they're saying that women are there, that essentially the view of the Pences and anyone that thinks like him is that these people are looking to just sleep with you or be with you in the end, take over your marriage, and that men, in this case, the view on men is archaic, and that like we club women and you know what I mean, like take them over. Hey, I'm going to drag you back to my house, whatever, cave. So.
Well, the only other point that I kind of just thought of, okay, some people on the right in the past have used it pejoratively to describe Muslims as they can't even control themselves. They must gown their women in a certain way because they can't control themselves around women. So that's been an attack of Sharia law and customs of Islam. Okay,
I've never made that point because I don't know if there's a religious purpose behind it. I'm not sure.
I'm not refuting it or not refuting it.
Yeah.
I have no problem if their women want to wear that, and I don't think you do. Want to.
Being the key
right.
words,
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was something I've heard other people on the
absolutely.
right use that, negatively to throw stones at Islam.
Uh-huh.
And then in the same token, the social justice warriors were there to defend Islam and say this is their choice, this is their religion, this is their tradition. Suddenly, Mike Pence is doing the same thing on a much more respectful level in my mind, and he's a misogynist.
Right.
What are we talking about here?
You bring up a great point, and that is that within the last 2 weeks, I believe it was actually last week, did you see that Alicia Keys got in trouble for a tweet that she put out there of this woman in a burqa? And it was like, it was a woman in a burqa, and she was in a modeling pose, and her leg was kind of showing out of the burqa. And she went on this whole diatribe of, being accepting and loving people for what they want to wear and all this other stuff. And she actually had to delete the tweet because Muslims were responding saying, we don't want to wear this stuff. We're forced to wear this stuff. And the whole thing about accepting, this is pushed and dominated on us, So that kind of leads into what you were saying there. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You're comparing traditions, and the social justice warriors will defend one case because it's a different religion than Christianity. Christianity, I'm sorry, but is very much under attack.
Sure.
All the time. And it's not under attack like it is over in the Middle East where we're lined up on shores and beheaded. I can understand that kind of persecution, how people would try to compare that instantly on the left and say, oh, please, Christianity is not under attack. Story after story. If it's a lawsuit involving Christians against someone else, especially if it's those people against the Christians, those people are going to win in today's culture. And, it's the crazy thing is all these stories, especially in regards to Christians, and again, this comes back to the baker's case and everything like that with making a cake for a wedding for an LGBTQ couple or anything. It always comes down to the fact that the type of people that engage in these lawsuits are saying, hey, let us live the way that we want to live, right? And we should be able to marry, we should be able to do this and that. And I'm back and forth. I'm very libertarian on that, because in some cases, my religion says one thing, but God's the ultimate judge in my mind. So if that's what happens and they push that through, I actually don't have that much of a problem with it. I would rather the states have a decision in it.
Sure.
But if that's the case, shouldn't there be a level of respect where, okay, I agree, live and let live, but live and let live with me too. Like if I'm a business owner, private business owner especially, and I don't want to participate in what my religion views as sin, then just leave me alone. Go find another person to do business with. How many cake makers are out there? How many photographers, videographers, wedding planners, and everything else in regards to that specific industry? In most of these cases, they were customers for years prior to that for everything else. In a lot of cases, I think if you were to ask someone like a photographer, right, that didn't want to participate in that kind of wedding, if you said, listen, take that scenario out of the equation, would you do photography for their birthday party if they had one? The photographer would be like, absolutely. Because that has nothing to do with what we're viewing as wrong, right? It's actually participating in what their religion views as a sin. And again, what you kind of brought up is the comparison of the Muslim faith versus the Christian faith. the left is so quick to defend the Muslim faith, which is much harsher than Christian faith on things, because Christians are like, I don't agree with that, leave me alone. Muslims are like, I don't agree with that, off with your freaking head. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, there's a big difference there. Or I'm going to stone you to death, or in the case of homosexuals, throw you off of a building. I mean, that's what's happening over in the Middle East, and the fact that we're getting into these arguments here about, you know, businesses participating in weddings when there are actually cases of homosexuals being thrown off of buildings just makes my ears and eyes bleed.
Sure. I think the only other point I would make is, you mentioned Christianity is under attack. I think one of the biggest reasons is you look at who it's under attack from. Okay, physically under attack by radicals in Middle Eastern countries. Yes. Okay. Yep. The verbal and the societal pressure that's being put on Christians here now, Christians are an easy target. Okay, and I see a lot of the people that are against Christianity and are have no problem putting down Christian ideals or trying to call out Christians for being wrong or not progressive because of their beliefs. I find that they came from Christian backgrounds a lot of times. Maybe their parents were, maybe their grandparents were, maybe something along those lines. And I think it's really a subtle form of racism or not racism, but prejudice. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to call it racism, but I was wondering where the angle not necessarily.
But go ahead. No, I hear.
Okay. Racism, prejudice, to say Christianity's bad, but Islam isn't, or white people are bad, but another race isn't, because you almost feel guilty or bad about being Christian, coming from a Christian background, being white, coming from a white background. It's almost a subtle form of prejudice, or, you know, I find this more with race.
Okay.
By almost feeling like, well, we have to treat them nice because you know,
be blamed for something.
They have, you know, look what we've done to this group. Look, we Christians have been in power, and you know, it's how demeaning is it to say that we must treat them differently because they're not Christian. We have to treat them with kid gloves. That is demeaning. But they have no problem treating a Christian poorly because they feel they're in a place of power.
And also because they don't fight back.
Right.
We don't fight back. You know, it's like true Christians. Now, you know, you take cases like the Westboro Baptist Church where they're nut jobs. You're talking about outliers there, right?
Sure.
But in most cases, when you're talking about Christians, you're talking about people who, if they understand their faith completely, they disagree with things, and they fight as much as they can, I think, legally and verbally, but we don't physically fight for what we believe in. I don't think.
Not recently.
It's
been a while. It's been a while.
But you know, it's like, and that makes it easy targets because, you know, okay, we're going to go against them. What the hell are they going to do? Mm-hmm. Whereas, hey, you know, you draw a cartoon of Muhammad and you're done. Like, that is literally what happened in France. Was it Nice?
Yes.
Where...
Charlie Hebdo.
Charlie Hebdo, yep, where he made a cartoon about Muhammad and they killed him.
Yes.
They killed him.
So that's the brutal reality, non-humorous part of this situation. I consider myself a connoisseur of political memes, and I brought this up to you before. Yeah. One of my favorites of all time is after that poor family lost everything over I think it was the florist or the cake, the wedding. Yeah. Yep. They lost the high-profile case. Can't remember the names of the people involved. There was a meme that came out that had a guy on a phone saying, "Hey, Islamic Baker of Baltimore, I need that Muhammad cake by this Friday." Yes, you have to. You know, and it was kind of a, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Why do they have to?
While you were talking, I actually thought of another perspective on this that I've actually brought up in the past, and I don't know if I've talked about it in the podcast, but I've certainly written about it in the past on Facebook and everything. And that is, I have talked about it on the podcast. It was actually one of the first ones. It's the difference between liberals and conservatives, politicians-wise, okay? Not citizen-wise. I try not to attack citizens because, look, you have a view, that's yours and everything, but when your view is legislated down to me, like, I should be able to say what I want to say about you. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So here's a big difference between what I think in regards to liberals and conservatives, and I don't mean to demean anyone that may be watching or anything, but I think that the biggest difference, and this is apparent in this case and in Bill Clinton's case, is that with Republicans, it's harder to be a Republican than it is to be a liberal. And the reason for that is because Republicans base their policies and morals and principles on a foundation of oftentimes faith and a moral code. Mm-hmm. Okay? So when that moral code is broken, it's a far fall because you've set your standards high, and that fall is going to hurt your butt a lot more from a higher up distance, right? So in the case of was it Mark Sanford out in New Jersey that was playing footsies under the stall with another guy?
I don't remember.
I forget who the politician was, but a Republican. He went in. That's like a signal for gay sex or something like that.
Oh, lovely.
Got caught for that, and he took a huge fall for it, right? And the reason is because Republicans typically have the stance, number one, that went against the Christian faith. Number two, if he's a Republican, then there's the questionability about homosexual type things, mm-hmm. right there, and policy-wise. So that was a big fall. Now, in the case of Bill Clinton and him having an affair, look, when that news broke and he actually came out and said that he lied, the biggest thing, like you said, was the lie, right? Most people were like, who cares if he was getting a blowjob in the Oval Office or what he did, right? And the reason for that is because Bill Clinton and those on the left don't have a moral code that they uphold or stick to in the public eye. I mean, he could have walked out there on camera and literally said to his followers, yeah, I hooked up with Monica Lewinsky, but hey, I'm not out here saying that marriage is a traditional thing that I honor and everything like that. You know, that's the Republicans that, with their biblical view of marriage and stuff like that. I never say anything about cheating or anything. There's no moral code to being a liberal at all. You know, which is why they can be offended by everything.
I think the moral code to being a liberal is you better have the moral code of today's date.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we're all going to get another moral code, and we're all going to get really, really serious about that. But we're going to forget about it by Friday, and then we're going to have another moral code on Friday. And whatever we thought about Tuesday, that's old news.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. We talked about that. The Daily Beast took their digs at the VP over his involvement in votes on women's health issues, but the writer did point out some supportive things. She said, there are sensible reasons that somebody like Pence would avoid being alone with women. He was first elected to Congress in the shadow of the Clinton sex scandal years. During that time, a self-preserving Politico would be wise to avoid any appearances of sexual impropriety. Plus, Pence's choice to avoid being alone with women is a function of his religious faith. It's hard to fathom similar left-wing backlash if Pence's conduct were informed by a non-Christian faith. So you were actually hitting points before we actually...
I'm sorry.
That's just great. That's what I'm looking for, is people that actually think about things. So, any final thoughts on this at all? I think we pretty much covered the bases.
Yeah, it's phony outrage.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay, so we've been going for an hour. So I just want to tell you again that this is the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. If you're just tuning in, I have my guest here, Gabe. So far, we actually talked about the Ghost in the Shell controversy of whitewashing. We just got done talking about Vice President Mike Pence and his kind of moral, religious-based code of not being alone in a room, like with dinner or anything like that, with another woman other than his wife. And there were a bunch of articles that came out in regards to that, where people were just attacking him and calling him a misogynist and a sexist, and how much that type of policy hurts people. Some disagreement on the side over here from my guest co-host, saying that he agrees in some ways with that, and I can understand where he was coming from on that, and some of those situations were very well laid out by him on why that would be the case, why you would want to have that kind of confidential meeting in some cases, especially in regards to proprietary information from companies, so that only certain people are usually privy to that information. You don't want to invite someone else in that could hurt the company by releasing that. So that's understandable. Again, if you're watching right now, you can always tune in on Fridays at 9 p.m. for the live broadcast, which we're doing. You can also find me on Facebook and YouTube by searching for the Generation Y Conservative. You can interact with me on Twitter by going to @GenYConservative without the E on the end. And you can find the audio versions of this podcast on Google Play, Stitcher, and iTunes, and that's actually put out by KLRNRadio, which you can listen to on the internet radio station on Sundays at 3 p.m. when this broadcast actually is repeated at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. They picked me up right after CPAC where I met them, and that was a phenomenal opportunity, and hopefully that relationship grows into more things. As a matter of fact, we'll see. It looks like I might be involved in CPAC next year instead of being a volunteer, actually going down with the radio network if there's an opportunity for that. So I might be broadcasting live from CPAC in that case, and that would be really cool. Okay, so one of our big topics tonight. Neil Gorsuch was appointed as the 113th Justice to the Supreme Court to fill Justice Antonin Scalia's seat with a 54 to 45 vote in the Senate. Judge Gorsuch possesses the credentials typical of the modern Supreme Court justice. He is a graduate of Columbia, Harvard, and Oxford. That's crazy. Served as a Supreme Court law clerk and worked as a lawyer at a prestigious Washington law firm and at the Justice Department. He joined the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit in Denver in 2006, where he was widely admired as a fine judicial stylist. It's important to note, I believe, that 3 Democrats in the United States Senate, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, and Joe Manchin of West Virginia, broke ranks with their party this afternoon to join with Republicans in voting to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. And it's important to point that out because they did not play into the child's play games of Washington that both sides are guilty of playing against the other side at any given time. Before we go on, any thoughts on this at all?
Keywords child's play, that's for sure.
It is, and both sides are guilty.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, terribly.
And we'll actually get into that regarding Garland and the Republicans.
Sure.
I'm actually interested in your thoughts on that, so let's go back to that. The reason this was a big deal is because Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court last year, Garland, was denied a hearing in front of the Senate by Republicans. Here's my thoughts on it. It was Obama's duty to propose a nominee, and he did. It was the duty of the Senate to hold a hearing on Garland. They didn't. The Republicans acted childishly and refused to do what they were supposed to do. I do believe that in the last term of a president with a major election around the corner, it is the duty to appoint a nominee and also the responsibility of the Senate to hold a hearing. But I believe in the circumstances, the Republicans should have voted no and left it to the American people to vote for who they wanted to replace a justice's seat. And what I mean by that is they should have at least held the hearing for him.
Okay.
And then voted no. Right?
Sure.
I think they took their toys and went home in this case. Particularly in a second presidential term with no midterms to worry about, it actually allows a president on either side to appoint radicals to the Supreme Court if there's no repercussions for re-election or anything. You know? So I think in the case of what happened last year, he did his duty. He proposed Garland for the Supreme Court. The Republicans should have held the hearing and voted no, saying, listen, we don't agree with these stances that he takes, and so we're voting no. And we also believe that the American public should have more of a say of who appoints the next justice to the court. And if Hillary Clinton believes that Garland should be on the Supreme Court, she can make that known in the primaries and the general election period of time, and people can vote for her so that can get pushed through. Mm-hmm. You know, but if people are upset with the way that things have been going over the last 8 years, or even the last 4, because their votes could have changed since they voted in 2012, then they should be able to have a say in what goes into this Supreme Court justice pick, who doesn't have a term. This is a life term. This is why it was so important to me. And I don't know your stance. I don't think I ever got it. I know that you agree with some things that he's been doing at least, but I was a never Trump person, and that all changed the day that Justice Scalia died. I mean, that was for a political moment in history, earth-shattering for me. I realized at that point in time, this is more important than the presidency.
Oh, by far.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely. So this guy has, they mentioned in the one article, this guy has the potential at the age of, I don't know if I wrote it down here. He has a potential of like 30 to 40 years of serving on the Supreme Court right now because of his age.
Sure.
And that's what I was actually most scared of with Hillary Clinton, is the fact that Hillary is radically leftist, right? She idolized Woodrow Wilson, who was one of the first progressives. She favored FDR's proposals, who was progressive, right? And she sides with Planned Parenthood, and believes that Margaret Sanger was a fantastic individual, even when Margaret Sanger literally started Planned Parenthood to rid minority communities of minorities.
Sure.
Hillary Clinton is radical, and the way that today's culture is going, with colleges pumping out radicals, right? She could literally have picked someone that entered the legal system right out of college that's a radical to serve for 50 plus years. That's a possibility. And with people like Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer, and who's the one that Bill O'Reilly just got, Maxine Waters, right? You have Patrick Leahy, the Saturday Night Live guy, Al Franken. These guys are all radicals, and which leads me to another point. This is like ADD stuff. I just keep on going off in all these directions. But what happened during this was, especially during the healthcare bill, all this stuff has been mixed up, right? Gorsuch and that stuff, the healthcare bill, which was Obamacare light in my mind, and all these other decisions. And what we had was, the news was picking out these Republicans that were defecting from the Republican Party, the conservatives mostly, that Freedom Caucus of the House, people that sided with the Heritage Foundation and everything. And the big news, instead of being these specific topics and what was going on, was that there were conservative defectors from the Republican Party and that there was infighting, right? And I personally believe that's a sign of different ideas, which cultivated make a better society when you can argue out those ideas. The left, on the other hand, when are there any defectors? It's like, I might as well just push on your head and like get it bobbling. You know what I mean? Yep. That's all it is with them. Let's see. While the Republicans in the Senate, let's see here. Oh, I did say that. Okay. While the Republicans in the Senate were guilty of playing games, both President Trump and Gorsuch were innocent in the situation, and this seemed to be more of a vendetta against the president. So again, let's go back to the original players in the Garland incident. President Obama, Garland himself, the Republicans in Congress at the time, and the Democrats in Congress at the time. Gorsuch wasn't involved. Donald Trump wasn't involved. Yet there's a vendetta against Donald Trump, and that's why they refused up until this point, still refuse basically, to appoint Gorsuch to the court when he had nothing to do with that situation.
Right.
Now, the Republicans in Congress, that's a different story in my mind. But at this point, vote on the merits of this person. They're not getting over the past.
No.
I ramble on, so go ahead if you have anything to say.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I'm not extremely well versed on the legalities and the process that must be followed. I'm learning a lot as I watch this go down.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Okay, I admittedly not up on this. Selfishly, I want it to be a conservative pick. Okay, as I'm sure you do as well. Okay,
yeah, just to replace, he's replacing the conservative.
Right,
of the Supreme Court.
Right. So, as an American citizen, you want balance. Okay, so the fight between that the Republicans are a mess right now. The conservatives are a mess, right? And it's uncomfortable to watch. But you brought up a good point. It's almost refreshing because this is supposed to be what we are creating in our government. It's supposed to be.
Yes.
We're not used to it.
No.
Okay, but it's supposed to be what we have. The bipartisan nature of our government sucks.
Yeah.
It's
especially when there's only two parties involved.
And so it leads to the child's play.
Yeah.
It's we have the power now. I'm going to hurt you, not because the American people are getting hurt, but because you're not me.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And reading Gorsuch's history and not really seeing where they're disagreeing with him as the choice, as the person who's going to be carrying out the laws. Great.
Yeah.
How about you find another way to make fun of Trump? Go back on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
How about you make his life a living hell there?
And that is the last point that I bring up in this, but we'll get to that in a second. One thing I did say is Senator Chuck Schumer proposed waiting until April 24th and also mentioned not holding confirmation until the president wasn't under investigation. Again, isn't this on the merits of Gorsuch himself, right? So what's interesting, though, is that Senator Schumer is only recently a critic of Gorsuch, as he and multiple other recent critics like Patrick Leahy, Dianne Feinstein, Dick Durbin, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, and Joe Biden all voted for Gorsuch's approval back in 2006 when he was nominated to serve on the U.S. Court of Appeals by President George W. Bush in 2006. And he was actually confirmed unanimously with a 95-0 vote in the Senate. Wow. So all those people that are involved in this hearing with him over the last couple weeks that are the biggest defectors from this appointment of him are ones that voted for him in the past with no problem, a unanimous vote of 95-0 in 2006.
So the same group of people that supported Gorsuch's ideals, his not platform, but what he's about, they supported it, are now not supporting it as a stronghold method. There's only one group suffering, and that's you and I,
yes,
and all of the Democrats as well.
Yeah, and I think citizens need to be made aware of that.
I mean, that's just horrendous.
Yeah. And this goes to your other point that I said I was going to get to. I said I find it funny that the majority of the criticism over Gorsuch's appointment had more to do with the controversy surrounding Trump's appointment and the denial of Obama's than the actual merits of Gorsuch, who is obviously praised and appreciated on both sides until his recent hearings, in which case the left went to great lengths to dig up hardly critical observations that held little water out of the more than 3,000 rulings he presided over as the U.S. Court of Appeals out in Denver. 3,000. I mean, did you hear some of the cases that they were bringing up against him?
No,
like the ice truck driver and stuff like that?
I haven't been too tuned into that.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, if you go back, I'm not going to hold you accountable to knowing that stuff because I'm the one that follows up on all this stuff. But the cases that they brought up, I sat there and I watched them like, you got to be kidding me. This is really what we're talking about right now?
Again, it's the same scenario as the social justice warriors being recreationally offended.
Yeah.
They are recreationally partisan. We're going to do this just because we can, and that's unacceptable for elected officials. And
you seem to be very aware of the divisiveness and partisan, mentality of Washington. In that it's just child's play games, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts over the last couple years now, since maybe even 2008, of emerging third parties and their likelihood of succeeding in future elections?
I don't have a whole lot of thought on the likelihood of them succeeding. That's going to happen organically. I really don't know.
Do you see steam in the movements, though?
So I'd say it's a steady increase, but very slow.
Yes, yeah.
I would say this year there was some, no candidate that would make any sense, which was
Austin Peterson I'm a huge fan of Austin Peterson. I think he should have won for the Libertarian vote over Gary Johnson, who just looks like a nutcase all the time.
Oh.
And the fact that, first of all, let me just preface this by saying, when Aleppo made the news, I had no idea what Aleppo was, right?
Oh.
But if you're running for president, you better have advisors on all this stuff, right? But I think that was a defining moment for him. As soon as he didn't know what Aleppo was, everyone just jumped on him for it, right?
Again, going back to the memes, you can't bomb Syria if you don't know where it is.
Which is the one I posted today. Okay, so let's get into the main topic for tonight, which I think is the most important. There was a chemical weapon attack in Syria, and the blame is being thrown around as to who is responsible, or in the case of Russia, whether it was a chemical attack at all, believe it or not. So here's what's known, and we'll take this case by case in regards to the details. On Tuesday, there was a chemical bombing in the rebel-held northern Syria, in rebel-held northern Syria. This happens to be an area that is terrorist-held, I guess, from what they're saying, and let's see. Okay, I get to this in here. Assad and the Russians appear to be blaming the terrorists who they were bombing for having the munitions in the first place, and that the bombings is what set them off. It seems to be is what they're saying to me.
So the terrorists' munitions set off the regime's chemical weapons.
You're labeling Assad as the terrorist in that case?
No.
That's what I'm saying. So Assad,
he calls everyone terrorists.
True, that's true.
If they oppose him, they're terrorists.
Yeah, I think ISIS controlled parts of the northern region. These people had chemical weapons, and Assad came in, bombed them, and I think the Russians were involved in the bombings too. And those bombings set off chemical munitions that ISIS had on the ground.
Oh, okay.
And that's what happened. That's what they're saying.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right?
I misunderstood.
Now, Western leaders, including President Trump, are blaming the Syrian government of President Bashir al-Assad and called on its patrons like Russia and Iran to prevent a reoccurrence of what many described as a war crime. You don't hear too much about Iran anymore. Is that just me? Because when
you don't, it's all Putin right now, and
yeah.
Because
when Ahmadinejad was in the picture, like that guy was crazy. He was scary. I really thought we were going to war during his time.
They haven't changed.
They haven't. Yeah, because it's the Al Khamenei. Is that like the top
Ayatollah?
Guy?
Yeah,
Ayatollah Khamenei.
Yeah,
that's a person that holds power above Ahmadinejad's position, and he is even crazier than Ahmadinejad.
Sure.
I am shocked that nothing has happened. And frankly, when they said Iran is involved in Syria and everything, I'm like, geez, Iran? I haven't heard Iran for a while.
Well, and that was a comment that I had heard last night. Again, all speculation. News anchors have to talk about something for 3 hours while they have nothing more to talk about. So I heard many times it very well could be all the aircraft at this site are already in Tehran. I heard that at least a half dozen times in an hour. The airfield that we bombed. They said it is very possible that the aircraft were scrambled and sent to Tehran.
So why would that be the case?
I don't know. I just
war game that out. Why that would be the case? Why would we? Because we have satellite imagery, or drone footage, of where we're going, right? So why would we bomb an airfield that doesn't have any airplanes on it? If that's the case,
it could. So they're saying we're working with the Russians to put together some type of not a false flag, that's the wrong word, but I heard that was the other theory, is that this is a coordinated deal with the Russians, since the Russians are fully aware of all this. I heard that as well today. Again, I have no idea.
No, and I don't either. And I like to war game things out and understand why things are happening the way that they're happening. So here's my thing. Here's what I'm imagining. If we're looking at satellite imagery of what we're bombing, we have a clear picture of where we can send these Tomahawk missiles. I believe it's Tomahawks.
Yes.
Like precision. like if those are the ones I'm thinking of, they can literally guide those into air ducts in buildings, like from the top, not like through air ducts,
right?
But you can aim for that air duct and put it in there,
okay,
right, as a pressure point or whatever for an explosion. So we have to have imagery. If we're looking at an airfield and we don't see any airplanes, and that's obviously not something that the public is seeing on anywhere on the news, right? The only reason why I can figure we are bombing that is a sign of strength without actual repercussions.
Sure.
Because in the end, the government could be like, okay, we get the point. You have the control. You have the ability to do this to us. You didn't hit our airplanes or anything, but that's not going to go public.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and actually that kind of stuff feeds into what I get into later here, which is in regards to Obama and Syria, which is a history, right? So what is said here is that 86 people, 26 of which are children, died in this chemical attack. And the way this article wrote it, it's pretty devastating. Some were writhing, choking, gasping, or foaming at the mouth after breathing in poison, which Turkish health ministry identified as a deadly poison, sarin, which is banned according to a treaty, which Assad signed within the last 2 years, I believe. According to witnesses, doctors, and rescue workers, they said that the toxic substance spread after warplanes dropped bombs in the early morning hours. Some rescue workers grew ill and collapsed from proximity to the dead. Usually I throw up pictures in my videos on some of these things that I'm talking about, especially in the edited YouTube version videos. I'm not going to do that in this case because I actually saw some of the pictures of the children that were affected by an obvious chemical attack. And it's those types of things that you can't get out of your head, especially if you're a parent. You know,
sure, can't unsee it.
So if you're interested in seeing that, you know, look, here's what I say. Sometimes you have to face the harshest realities of our world today to understand how you're going to argue. Okay, so in the case of Islam. And I'm just going to bring this into this real quick. I don't think you have a leg to stand on when you're talking about these terrorists unless you've watched the video of Daniel Pearl being beheaded. Okay? I've actually seen that.
I have as well. And
it's brutal.
I still remember every minute, every second of it.
His screaming and gurgling, that sticks with you. And I don't think that you can have a true, I don't want to say appreciation for, I guess, not appreciation for the situation, but for the argument against these people, unless you've watched that. Because when I'm being argued against on Islam, and there's a difference between Islamic and Muslim, okay? When I'm hearing arguments for Islam, protectionism from the left against any of the arguments that I have, that's what's playing in the back of my head. And I'm thinking to myself, how could you argue this after seeing that? But I guess then I have to rethink, okay, they probably haven't seen what these kind of people are capable of. But yeah, so these toxic substances spread after the warplanes dropped the bombs. And, you know, just visually in your mind, if you don't want to actually see the pictures, their limbs are kind of curled up. Their skin is yellowish. And there's foam and just it's horrifying. It's almost like The Ring, after the horror movie after they were finally killed by Samara, I think is her name or whatever. But it's that bad. It's really bad. Did you say that you did see the pictures or no?
I did not. I saw the Daniel Pearl thing. I did not see I did not see the children with the chemical warfare.
Okay. If these munitions were in the possession of Assad, it would actually bring to light the lies that were told by President Obama and the Secretary of State at the time, John Kerry, that 100% of the chemical weapons of Syria had been turned over within the last couple of years. That is something that both of them came out and said. We now have possession of 100% of the chemical weapons that Assad had after the signing of the treaty. So if this is proven to have, which I don't really understand how you would even be able to prove that at this point once they're detonated. People are able to do that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there might be satellite footage that you could backtrack and see. I don't know. But if that's the case, then we were also lied to as American people by the previous president and the Secretary of State, John Kerry. So,
maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but even if we weren't lied to by them, how can we possibly trust Assad? How can we possibly trust another government? Yeah. And I'm not saying he is lying, but it's not exactly your closet. It's Syria. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we made the deal with Iran too, and they're not going to do these things because we made that deal, right? Yeah. That never. I'm oversimplifying drastically, but that never made any sense to me.
The paying of the billions or trillions, it was billions, I think. Of
dollars. Yes, no, I'm just saying in general. Yes, they signed this treaty. Great.
What does that mean?
I don't understand.
Yeah.
And
it always seemed like Obama drew red lines, and then once they were crossed, it was like, well, I'm just going to draw it out here now instead.
Sure.
He was a pushover president.
Sure.
And the most he fought was against Republicans. Mm-hmm. So he actually fought more against American people that disagreed with him than actual governments. He stood against the American people.
Sure.
And stood for things like the Arab Spring in Egypt. He stood for the protests in Egypt and didn't stand with the protesters in Iran. And those are two situations that should have both gone the other way.
Right.
And so he was wrong on so many fronts. It was unbelievable.
I mean, that it's one of those things. He was a slick talker like no other, and so many people put blinders on with it. Mm-hmm. When it's delivered the way he delivered it, it's easy to put the blinders on because status quo feels pretty comfortable. Right now, status quo. There is no status quo. Okay,
you cannot predict this guy at all.
No, you can't put blinders on, which is really uncomfortable, but also really almost necessary that we have this shake-up so the American people are actually watching.
Let's talk about Tommy suing Beck. Ben said, let's talk about Tommy suing Beck. I actually haven't heard that yet, so maybe we'll have that in the next podcast in the coming week. We'll see, because that's a topic I've been following along with and had things to say on that. We could talk about that quickly on
sure.
one front after this. Okay, so the reaction to this chemical attack was swift by the administration. While having dinner with China's president, President Trump also addressed the nation and said he launched a missile attack on a Syrian airfield in response. That strike involved 59 Tomahawk missiles. Trump, unlike Obama, clearly laid out a red line not to cross and took action when it was. Obama just kept redrawing the lines, which is what I said before. Russia responded to Trump's action by sending a Russian warship toward the U.S. destroyers that launched the missiles. I had a funny thing I have to tell you. Can't say who I know in a public podcast or anything, but they serve on a submarine, a nuclear submarine, right? And one of the running jokes, I think I saw a meme. You and I must be into memes a little too much, but
admittedly, yes.
I said, I saw the pictures of U.S. destroyers. I don't know if they were the ones that launched the missiles, but I said if it was a submarine that launched it, it would just be a picture of water. These are the ones that launched the missiles. Just the surface of the water, and you can't see anything. So
I'd go for that one.
Yeah,
I'd go for that meme.
But so here's. Let me see if. Okay, I didn't go into that. So one of the other big things that's going on right now is North Korea is bat crap crazy. Okay, so we're actually dealing with so many different situations. Trump is being put to the test on foreign soil. Okay, it's a hard one. I disagree that we should have taken a first strike in response to Syria. I don't think we should have done that. I think it's the same thing with rhetoric that's out there, right? I don't like to get, or I take caution with getting involved with things like Tommy that Ben's talking about. What I did when I laid out my Tommy situation in the 2 podcasts ago on what I think was happening, I clearly said, this is my assumptions. These are why I think it's going this way. But it's hard when you're getting involved with the rhetoric of people to assume things, right? Mm-hmm. And in this case here, the details aren't clear. I mean, they're so muddy that we're throwing out things. You're throwing out things that you heard. I'm throwing out things that I heard on both sides. Here's what we do know: a chemical attack killed people in Syria, and Russia was involved. The Syrians were involved. We launched missiles. Right. I mean, those are the clearest facts of this whole case. Right. You know, and everything else is basically going on assumption or, you know, sarin. I guess they tested that and confirmed that was sarin. But in regards to North Korea, he's also being tested there. And the crazy thing about the North Korean situation is they're launching. They keep on launching missiles into the ocean, and the scary thing is that where they are doing their test detonations is basically near the atmosphere more, right? Okay. And a lot of people are claiming that this is just North Korea being completely dumb. They can't get their own stuff under order. That they're basically antiques of what sure. weaponry is and everything. The problem is that's typically the height at which EMPs are triggered. Okay. Right? And if there's one thing, I think they said like 90% of the U.S. population, if our power was wiped out by EMP, because that affects computer chips in everything, it fries them, right? So it's not like, oh, let's wait for them to get the power stations back and running and our electricity will come back on. No, this TV becomes crap. You throw it away. The computer becomes crap. Everything digital with a chip is fried, and you have to start over. So the first process in that is getting back into probably production from a foreign source of computer chips and rebuilding factories to rebuild everything else. You're talking about possibly years to get back to what you know our society is, and people start not literally eating each other, but it's possible, right? And they predict that in an EMP attack, 90% of the population dies off within the first year because of inability to access food and other resources, and frankly, people looting and rioting and going after people, and that basically, you know, comes out from the cities and keeps on making its way outward. I mean, if in that case, in that situation, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near a city, because that's where people are going to be killing each other for the resources fast. Whereas out in the country, we're probably more prepared because we can farm our own crap. You know what I mean? Our own resources. But in this case here with North Korea, the reason why President Trump was meeting with China's president was over this North Korea situation and what is going on. And the fact that he took time out of his dinner and meeting with the Chinese president to address the American people, that they launched missiles at the Syrian airbase and then came back to him, is kind of like China doesn't want to get involved in North Korea, but they know that it's a problem, right? So Trump, in a good way, the positive end of this missile attack is that he's flexing his muscle, unlike our previous president who launched more apologies to other countries than he did missiles. Sure. You know what I mean? So it's a completely different, opposite approach in that regards. And he came back to the Chinese president, and he's, you know, possibly a sign of, hey, listen, you need to get on board with what we're proposing if we have to do something in North Korea, because this is on your, essentially, borders here, and you need to get involved with it too, if that's the case, because it is going to affect you, you know? Sure. Other than that, there's not too much positive stuff to go along with this, which is why I'm kind of against it. And I've been babbling again, so go ahead and say your thoughts.
I think, you know, I heard an interesting thought, and I can't credit who it was, I don't remember, some news outlet or something. It said, you know, Trump may be one of the first presidents to ever be criticized for actually upholding his campaign promises. And you know, his ego won't let him do a lot of things. Okay,
absolutely. Yep.
So that is very bad in some cases. I think the biggest hole or the biggest worry I had with Trump becoming president, and I voted for Trump.
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
Was his foreign policy. You know, where's that experience coming from? We want someone from outside. You know, that's the dream, the utopia is we're going to have this white knight come in and from the outside and shake things up and, you know, not drain the swamp or whatever rhetoric they put on it. But that was a fear that I had. Okay, what's he going to do when he's across the table from a lifelong politician?
Yeah.
Okay, because like them or not, this is what they do. Okay, not saying they're good for the people they govern, but this is what they're trained in putting spin. And
patting your back with one hand while taking a knife to it with the other.
He's very clear, okay? You do this, we got a problem.
Yeah.
They did it, now they have a problem.
Yeah.
So, although I'm not thrilled with that it happened, I don't know what's going to happen next. If you do, I'd love to know. Okay, but
in the dark.
But I do feel I am encouraged by the fact that he's at least going to hold his promises. You've got to get good advisors and have a diverse group advising him, in my mind, to make sure he draws the right red lines, but at least he'll stand behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
To me, that's all you have in this world, whether you're a politician or an average citizen, is you're standing by your word. So let's get the people to help him make a good word, but he's got to stand behind it, or he loses.
I'm going to try to fit some quick points into our time frame here, nearing up on the 2-hour mark here.
Oh, sure.
But in regards to what you're saying about him being across the table from a professional politician, that is one problem that Trump is having right now, and it's not a Trump problem. It's a politician problem, which is, I personally believe that there is evidence that both the Republicans and Democrats in Congress are actively working against Trump because he's not a politician, strictly because of that, and that they want to make a point that you have to be a politician to run for political office. You know, that they are going to end this here and now and make an example of Trump, even if they agree with him on some topics.
Sure.
And I think that's pretty scary, because I think it's going to limit other good people from running for these types of positions. I said I find it interesting that anyone on the left would be up in arms over this decision that Trump took with the launching of the missiles, when they said nothing when Obama wanted to do the same thing back in 2013. This was right the year after Benghazi. Now, I had a theory back then, and I can't confirm that theory because I would have to be privy to the information. But I still hold it, and that is that he wanted to bomb specific spots in Syria that held weapons that were part of U.S. deals in Benghazi when things went south and 4 Americans were killed. The CIA, and they alluded to this in the movie 13 Hours, right, was involved in gun running. And not just gun running, weapon running, right? Sure. And one of the theories was that the people saw an opportunity, that the weapons were there, that they hadn't discussed for America as it was, and that they could just take them instead of actually negotiating with us, right? And it seemed like the summer of 2013, when Obama proposed this, it was out of nowhere, right? Obama... There was nothing going on in the news in regards to Syria being a problem. And one day during the summer, and Ben's commenting on here, it was, I remember specifically, I was working with Ben. We were sitting in the office and watching CNBC, and he came on, and it was almost like he was sweating, like this was urgent, that we had to bomb specific weapons depots in Syria. And Congress went nuts. They're like, you need our approval to do that, and what are your reasons? And he wouldn't give reasons. And I truly believe that it's because in those depots were United States munitions that could be easily traced back to us, that people would say, how the hell did they get these weapons? Mm-hmm. You know, Obama was involved in Fast and Furious and gun running down into Mexico, which had no tracking system. I mean, that was literally the only way you could war game that out, is that he wanted those weapons to come back in regards to situations of violence from across the border with weapons here in the United States for them to push more gun control. That's all that I could figure out in wargaming, right? But they were also doing things with the CIA in Benghazi, and eventually that died down after a couple days because our Congress wasn't having it.
Sure.
They're like, you're not giving us good reasons. And I really think that was a reason. I said another interesting point is that pro-Trump conservatives, sorry, Ben, you're going to be pulled into this one. Pro-Trump conservatives that believe Trump would lead us away from wars are among some of the most upset right now. So I take a little bit of a disagreement with what you said earlier about his campaign promises, because those campaign promises included going to Congress for approval of such actions and to let Russia deal with the situation in Syria. These are specific things that he criticized Obama on. He said when Obama wanted to go into Syria that he should seek congressional approval to do so. He did not do that in this case. He said that Russia should be handling what's going on in Syria. He didn't let that happen. I mean, we're 3 days out, or
right.
when that... No, he did it the next day. Like, for crying out loud, let it simmer and let's get the facts. I mean, like we were talking about, there is no facts to this thing that are clear cut, you know. Right. And of course, he's privy to intelligence information that we don't have, so there might be something there. But that's a fast reaction. That is a really fast reaction.
Sure.
I said this failed. This coupled with the failed Republican health care bill to replace Obamacare are not wearing well for this presidency among his staunchest supporters so far. Not to mention Steve Bannon, who I hate, is no longer involved in a lot of things, but Ivanka and her husband are given more responsibilities, and they are outspokenly liberal. They are. So my biggest criticism during the primary seasons was that he was going to get into office and turn out to be more of a leftist than people were expecting, based on flags that were raised throughout his lifetime. You know, I'm not saying that is purely the direction that he's heading right now, because the Neil Gorsuch pick was phenomenal.
Sure.
He has done some amazing things. I mean, most of the things that he's been doing, I say at almost every podcast, I agree with. I just don't like executive orders.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think he is running into a real problem right now with his staunchest supporters, who happen to be the most outspoken against what's going on in Syria right now.
Right.
Any last thoughts on that at all?
No, I think you're absolutely right about the campaign promises. I think what I actually meant was he's not one to back off something he said he would do because his ego won't let him.
Right.
So he clearly had a history of saying we shouldn't do this, and you're right. So absolutely, and I appreciate you clarifying that.
No, that's okay. I wasn't trying to call you out.
No. Because I was thinking about that. I was like, now I see what you're saying. But it's a positive and a negative. I think that ego, as long as the lines he's drawn are reasonable, he's got to stand behind him, and we as a nation have to stand behind him. And Obama drew that line, so just the fact that he held up the Obama's statement is interesting. That it's the fire is drawn.
Yeah. Ben wanted me to talk about Tommy. I do have something quick to say about Tommy, and that is he said that there's a lawsuit against Beck, and that might be the case. The only thing that I saw that was going on recently in regards to a legal battle between the two of them is that Tommy was upset that her Facebook page wasn't allowed to migrate with her as a personality because the Blaze assumed ownership of that. It was their page that they started, and she wants those followers to come along with her, because starting a new page, you're going to lose followers.
Sure.
You know, you're going to have to migrate that audience somehow. I understand her plight, but that's the company's page. If they started it, it's theirs.
Yeah.
Like, she has to get over it.
Sure.
You know, there's no other thing to say about it, really.
Sure.
What do you think about Tommy? Before we even get into the Blaze situation, what do you think about her as a conservative voice?
I like the message.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, from a purely entertainment side, I'm not a fan.
Okay.
Okay. Not a fan of the delivery.
Either am I.
I think it's pretty terrible.
Yes.
I can't say I've ever watched a whole segment she's done, not because I wasn't interested in the topic. She's very attractive. I mean, any red-blooded American male that's straight would want to watch it.
Well, don't assume genders either, though.
I'm assuming. So tough. All right. Any American who happens to like the way she looks,
yeah, there you
go. Is fine. But as far as the delivery, I can't take it.
She's always angry.
It's just why?
Yeah, and I think Trevor Noah hit that on the head when he was like, "Why are you always angry?" And it's like the old adage, which is you attract more flies with honey than with
right vinegar or whatever. Yeah.
It's like I said this, I think, in that podcast that last time I mentioned Tommy, which is her best moments are when she's smiling and having fun, you know, and it's because it's a more relatable thing, you know. Again, the way our society is going with tapping into the negative emotions of people is rotting us from within.
Sure.
And she's part of that problem.
Sure.
She has an opportunity to unite more people behind a message with a positive approach. And instead she's uniting people with a negative approach. And it's not going to end well, I don't think. It's
kind of the same. If you want to put the worst two people in a room for me to want to turn something off, put her and Trevor Noah in a room. I couldn't click off of that fast enough. I mean, if I even hear either of their voices, I'm done. I don't want to deal with it. I don't like the delivery of either. But I think there's just too much of a cry wolf in her delivery that she's not going to change minds. And I think her delivery is good if she's, on a ham radio in a war zone somewhere yelling it, not on the national stage.
Bomb, bomb, bomb.
Yeah. So I wish her the best of luck. I don't wish her any harm, and any conservative voice is good. That's a younger voice, but
true. Yeah, we need a new generation because, frankly, listen, the tried and true representatives of conservative media. You have Rush Limbaugh, always at number one. You have Sean Hannity. You have Mark Levin, Glenn Beck. You have who's the guy that got banned over in Europe? He had a show here on our local station, but it was canceled. I forget his name. I can't think of it. But, these people, while great at what they do, and I'm not denying them that, they are going to have, especially with the way our culture is heading, a hard time connecting with younger people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's purely because we've become a ADD society of just, you have a couple moments of my time, and if you're not saying something interesting, I'm tuning out.
Right.
Which is sometimes my problem with viewers.
Sure.
Going at 2 hours. But, you need people within a generation that at least lead them to the message. And Tommy is that younger generation. Unfortunately, there's no substance behind it because she doesn't do her own research. When she was cornered by Trevor Noah on the Colin Kaepernick situation, when he said, how should he have responded? She didn't have an answer. After weeks of lambasting him on how he protested, she didn't have an answer on what he should have done, which I think is one of the most important things for political conversations. It's one of the things that I've pulled out is that if you're going to talk about politics and identify problems, you need to have some solutions.
Sure.
Right? Which I often fall into. I'm so focused on going through these and talking about the problems, sometimes I don't offer the solutions, and I should be doing that. And I fall into that trap too, because you get into a mindset, you got into a role on what you want to complain about, and then it's the next topic because you're trying to make time.
Sure.
But that is something that I think any conservative voice out there in media needs to grasp is, in my mind, from a marketing perspective, which is my background, you in marketing have to appeal to what people are looking for. And I think in this day and age, they're looking for solutions. Mm-hmm. She did not offer solutions.
Marketing, business, sales, whatever you want to call it, a big part of it's putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
And going through the motions and role-playing a bit, and it was, I agree, just too one-sided.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen for the next hour. I'm going to scream it at you, and then you're going to turn this off.
Yeah.
And didn't appeal to me, so I can't imagine she was converting many people.
True. All right. Any other things you want to talk about at all?
No.
All right. Well, I want to thank Gabe for being here. It was fun. He definitely is someone that's knowledgeable on politics, so I enjoy having conversations with those types of people. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. If you are watching this or listening to this, you can always find me on Facebook by searching for the Generation Y Conservative. You can find me also on YouTube with multiple other videos besides a podcast by searching for the Generation Y Conservative. I'm up with a lot of videos on that site right now, especially if you're tuning in on KLRNRadio. All my previous podcasts can be found on there because we came in a little bit late with KLRN. I think there's only about 3 episodes up on there right now since I've been with them, but I'm on podcast 19 now. So, like I said, on KLRN Radio, you can find me on Sundays at 3 p.m. You can also find me on Google Play. You can get this audio podcast as well as Stitcher. And KLRN has actually put me on iTunes as well, so you can find me there. So lots of ways that you can interact. On Twitter, it's at GenYConservative without the E on the end. Here's what I ask of you. The conservative message is not a popular one. So anytime you get the opportunity, if you can, like the page, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. That helps out, and share those things, certainly, because we need to spread the conservative message. And you know what? And along those lines, too, the reason why there's always a fluctuation of waves of back and forth between conservative movements and liberal movements is because younger generations are always rebelling against their parents. And the Reagan Revolution happened after the hippie generation. They went to Clinton, it went back to Bush, then it went extremely liberal with Obama. And I think now is our time. I think that the social justice warriors and the using of pronouns and people being offended by everything is turning a lot of people off, especially our young generations. And you're seeing that statistically with younger generations becoming more pro-life than ever before, more pro-traditional marriage. The fact that there is this tolerance that's seen, that you can be tolerant and not accepting of certain things, which is a difference. So the way that we can do this is by sharing and growing this audience and connecting together. I have a great audience that always tunes in, and great people like Gabe who is always participating in comments and getting involved with things. And let's grow that. So that's all I ask of you. I'm not asking for any money or anything else. You lead them to my pages, we start a conversation, and hopefully we get big enough that this takes off even more. So thank you for tuning in, and have a great night, and God bless America.